Have you ever looked in the mirror and been unhappy with what you see?
Every day.
What insecurity comes up the most? My physical appearance.
What?
What is your biggest insecurity?
Probably my eyebrows,
Why?
because they're too big.
My weight too. I'm right in the middle where it's like, you're not too much, but you're not enough small.
You don't trust the mirror. You don't trust compliments. But the scariest part? You've built your entire identity on a version of yourself you don't even believe in. Insecurities have made you doubt yourself and the people around you. These stories are meant to resonate with you and give you some insight to why your mind seems to have more control than you do. Sienna knew where to stand. 2 feet from the bathroom mirror, overhead light on, chin tilted just enough to catch the shadow she hated. Her morning ritual wasn't about makeup or skincare. It was about proof. Proof that she still looked wrong, and the mirror gave it to her. Every time. To someone else, the image might have looked fine, a 26-year-old woman. Symmetrical features, clean skin, hair tied back in a loose bun. But to Sienna, the problem wasn't the whole picture. It was underneath it. The bump in her nose, the subtle asymmetry in her jaw, the softness in her cheeks that wouldn't go away no matter how little she ate. She didn't hate herself. That would be easier to confront. She hated the way she almost looked, the way she was supposed to, like she'd been built from a reference photo, but the printer ran out of ink halfway through. It started in high school. Someone called her soft-faced during sophomore year. It wasn't cruel, more like an offhanded comment from a girl reapplying lip gloss before class. But Sienna remembered it, not because it hurt, because it confirmed something. She'd already been studying her reflection in department store windows, obsessively comparing her selfies to models on her Pinterest board. She'd already learned to smile with her mouth closed in photos, to angle her head just slightly in every group picture. By the time she was 17, she had memorized the contour of her insecurities better than any subject in school. She didn't want to be famous or even beautiful. She just wanted to feel done, to wake up and not check 5 angles of her face before leaving the house, to stop clenching her jaw at red lights, because she read it, helped define the cheekbones, to go a full day without wondering if anyone had noticed the spot above her eyebrow that never quite smoothed out, no matter how much concealer she used. She knew it sounded shallow, but insecurity doesn't need logic. It just needs repetition. In college, it got worse. The screens got brighter, the comparisons sharper. She followed beauty influencers with sculpted features and soft-spoken captions about self-love. She watched nose job vlogs, just out of curiosity. She'd wake up at 3 a.m. and Google before and after images of minor cosmetic procedures, not because she wanted to do them, but because what if? She went on dates but never let anyone see her without makeup. She turned her phone slightly when taking selfies with friends so her left side would show. She still laughed, still graduated with honors, still showed up for people, and no one, not a single person, ever suspected how loud the silence was when she looked in the mirror. Then came the day of the conference. She was presenting a case study at a marketing summit. Dozens of professionals in attendance. Her slides were clean, her voice steady, but when she stepped off stage and caught a glimpse of herself on the venue's monitor, an unflattering side angle, forehead glossy from the lights, something in her short-circuited. The panic wasn't loud. It was cold. She smiled, took compliments, thanked her supervisor. Then she went to the restroom and stared at her reflection until her hands shook. That night, she deleted every photo of herself from the event. She stayed up until 4 a.m. scrolling skincare forums. She bookmarked clinics. She Googled how to know if you're imagining flaws in your face. And that's when she found it. Body dysmorphia, a term she'd heard before, but only now. In that moment of collapse, did it click? Body dysmorphic disorder, or BDD, is a condition where individuals obsess over perceived flaws in their appearance, often ones invisible to others. But it's not just vanity. It's distorted perception, like living inside a funhouse mirror your brain won't let you escape from. Studies using fMRI scans have shown that people with BDD actually process visual details differently. Their brains may fixate on minute imperfections and struggle to integrate the whole image, leading to magnified focus on tiny, imagined flaws. And the more they check, compare, and correct, the stronger the neural loop becomes. The flaw doesn't grow. The obsession does. Sienna started therapy that spring. The first few sessions were awkward. She worried her therapist wouldn't believe her, or worse, would think she was fishing for compliments. But gradually, they worked through it. She practiced mirror exercises. She logged her thoughts. She learned to name the feeling before it spiraled into ritual. There were still hard days. Still mornings where she'd turn her face to the side and flinch. But for the first time, she had a word for what was happening. And sometimes, naming the distortion is the first step towards seeing the truth. She still stood in front of the mirror every morning, still knew the angles, still remembered the list of things she used to hate. But the difference was this: she no longer believed the mirror over herself. Because now, she could finally tell the difference between what was there and what insecurity had built on top of it. The face we see in the mirror isn't always the one others see, but insecurity doesn't need reflection to take root. Sometimes, it hides behind confidence, behind competence, behind every accomplishment, waiting to whisper that you're not enough. And the louder your achievements, the quieter the voice gets until someone asks a question you don't know how to answer. Aaron wasn't arrogant. He just always had the answer. He was the kind of person professors remembered by name. The guy who didn't just ace tests, he finished them early and corrected typos in the questions. At work, he became the go-to, the problem solver, the one people emailed when something broke or didn't make sense or needed to be explained to upper management in fewer than 3 sentences. They said he was brilliant, a natural, but what no one knew, not his coworkers, not his friends, not even his parents, was that every time someone praised him, Aaron felt a small flicker of fear, because in his mind, every compliment was a setup, and every achievement, a delay, a countdown to the moment someone would finally notice. He wasn't supposed to be here. It had started, like these things often do, early. Aaron's parents were kind, encouraging, but high-achieving. In the quiet, unspoken way, his mom was a physician who worked 12-hour shifts without complaint. His dad fixed complex mechanical things and never looked at the manual. Aaron was good at school. He liked the rules, the structure, the ability to win by being careful and prepared. But every time he got something right, he noticed how tightly he clung to it, like if he loosened his grip, the truth would slip out, that it had been luck. That next time, he wouldn't know. That maybe he just sounded smart, not was smart. By the time he got into grad school, the voice in his head had grown more polished. It didn't scream. It whispered, "Sure, you got in. But that was because your application was well worded. They liked your writing sample, not you. They haven't seen you mess up. Not yet." At 27, Aaron was promoted to strategy lead at a mid-sized tech company. The title felt fake in his mouth. He smiled for the photo, replied "thank you" to the congratulatory Slack messages, drank the champagne someone had brought to the office, and made a toast that people said was humble and thoughtful. Inside, he felt like he was watching someone else, someone who deserved to be in that chair. Not him. The unraveling didn't come dramatically. No crash, no scandal. Just a moment, a quiet one. It was a Thursday meeting, end of Q3. His team was reviewing a client's product roadmap, and someone, a junior analyst, raised her hand. She asked about a line in his report. Why did we project a 12% churn improvement from that feature when the benchmark shows 6%? Aaron blinked. He had a vague idea, a rationale, but the numbers were based on a pattern he'd seen, not proven, something instinctual, not false, but not concrete. He opened his mouth to answer, and nothing came out. Just a second of silence. Maybe 2, but in Aaron's head, it was louder than any outburst. He finally answered, smoothly, politely, said they'd double-check, thanked her for catching it. The meeting moved on, but his mind didn't. That night, Aaron rewrote the entire report, deleted 18 slides, started over. He stayed up until 4:30 a.m. cross, referencing industry benchmarks, historical models, feedback loops from 3 competitors. No one had asked him to. No one expected it. But that one moment, that gap had broken something. He started obsessing. Not visibly. He still smiled. Still led meetings. Still replied to emails, with emoji reactions and polite warmth. But he second-guessed everything. He'd write a document, then rewrite it 5 times. He'd triple-check data he already knew was right. He stopped suggesting new ideas in meetings unless he had a spreadsheet to defend them. Even compliments became painful. When someone said, "That was genius," he'd force a smile, then spend the evening trying to figure out what they meant, what they misunderstood, and why they were wrong. He began keeping a private folder labeled errors. Each time he caught himself making one, even small ones, he wrote it down, just in case someone else found it first. This wasn't humility. This was fear in disguise. And it's not rare. Aaron was living inside a textbook example of impostor syndrome, a persistent internalized fear of being exposed as a fraud, despite evident success and competence. Research shows that imposter feelings affect up to 70% of high-achieving individuals at some point in their lives, especially those who internalize success as luck or charm rather than ability. People with imposter syndrome often believe, "I fooled them. I got lucky. If I succeed, it's because I worked twice as hard. If I fail, it proves they were right all along." It's fueled by perfectionism, comparison, and environments that reward performance over vulnerability. And ironically, it strikes those who are most capable because the smarter you are, the more you know what you don't know. For Aaron, the damage wasn't in the work. It was in the mental tally he kept every time he got away with it. Each success wasn't a brick in his self-esteem, it was a delay in his exposure. And the better he did, the more he feared the fall. One night, after a long meeting, his manager walked by and said, "I hope you know how much you carry this team." Aaron nodded, thanked her, then walked to the bathroom, locked the door, and sat on the floor. Not crying, just tired. Because carrying that weight wasn't just about being competent. It was about pretending not to be afraid every time someone looked at him like he had the answers. Eventually, he started seeing a therapist. At first, he framed it as just trying to stay sharp. But during the 3rd session, when he described the Thursday meeting, the one with the analyst's question, his voice cracked. And for the first time in years, he admitted something out loud. "I'm terrified that they think I'm better than I am." His therapist asked, "What would happen if they knew the real version of you?" He didn't know how to answer. Healing didn't come quickly. It started with small things. Letting someone else lead a presentation and not rewriting their slides. Leaving a typo in a team memo on purpose just to see if he could survive it. He began noticing the double standard, how he gave grace to everyone but himself. How he could list the strengths of his coworkers without hesitation and could barely name one of his own. And slowly, the space between who he was and who he pretended to be began to shrink. Not disappear, but narrow, enough to breathe. Aaron's still the smartest guy in the room sometimes. But now, when someone asks a question he doesn't know the answer to, he doesn't freeze. He says, "I'm not sure, let me find out." And that voice, the one that used to whisper, "They'll find out you're a fraud," it's quieter now. Not gone, but quiet. Some insecurities hide behind the mirror, others behind the mask of competence. But there's another kind, deeper, harder to name. The kind that attaches itself to love, that says, to be wanted, you must never be too much or too little. That kind of insecurity doesn't ask for recognition. It begs for reassurance. Elana knew the shape of loneliness. It didn't look like isolation, not for her. It looked like waiting for a text that never came. She was always in relationships. That wasn't the problem. She knew how to be wanted. She just didn't know how to be kept. Her last relationship lasted 2 years. On paper, it was solid, a high school teacher and an architect sharing a 1-bedroom apartment and a coffee table they built together. They had cute photos, inside jokes, a Spotify playlist. But inside Elena's chest was a silent machine, always calculating. He didn't kiss me goodbye today. He didn't laugh at my joke. He turned over in bed without saying goodnight. Something's wrong. So she'd ask, "Are we okay? Are you mad at me? Do you still love me?" And he'd sigh, say yes. Every time. Yes. But his tone changed. The yes grew thinner. Until, eventually, he didn't answer at all. The breakup wasn't messy. He said he felt smothered. Said she was always on edge. Said he needed to breathe without being watched. She nodded. Packed her things. Said nothing. But when she got home to her mother's spare room, She screamed into a towel for an hour. Because it wasn't fair. She loved him. She tried so hard to be what he needed. Why wasn't that enough? It wasn't her first time asking that. Her childhood had trained her well. Her dad loved big, but inconsistently presents and hugs followed by silence and sudden withdrawal. Her mom absorbed stress like a sponge and wrung it out in the form of guilt. Elana learned to adapt, to please, to become whatever the other person needed before they had to ask. Love, she believed, was something you earned by anticipating pain and preventing it. So she got good at scanning for signs. A change in tone, a delayed reply, the subtle tension in a sentence that sounded fine but felt off. And when she found them, and she always did, she responded. More attention, more affection, more apologies. Even if she didn't know what she was apologizing for. Her relationships followed a pattern. She'd meet someone, feel the spark, fall fast. She'd listen more than she spoke, mirror their interests, send good morning texts like clockwork, bring little gifts, remember anniversaries they didn't. They'd say she was the most thoughtful partner they'd ever had. And for a while that would be enough. Until they started pulling away slowly, subtly. Fewer calls, less eye contact, longer gaps between plans. Then she'd panic. Not outwardly. She wasn't dramatic. She just got better. She tried harder, smiled more, texted first, offered to cancel her plans to be with them, learned how to cook their favorite meal. She called it love. But what she was doing was negotiating with absence. And then always the break. Sometimes a fight, sometimes just silence, but always the same result. She'd be alone again. And in that emptiness, her brain whispered the question she hated most. Were they ever really here? Or were you just clinging to an echo? Elena's pattern wasn't random. She was shaped by what psychologists call an anxious, preoccupied attachment style. One of the 4 primary ways people learn to connect with others, typically rooted in early caregiving experiences. Anxious attachers crave closeness, but constantly fear rejection. They rely heavily on external validation to feel secure, and often interpret neutral behavior as potential abandonment. They're not weak, they're vigilant. Their minds scan for emotional threats the way some people scan for danger in dark alleys. And once that fear is triggered, their responses are intense reassurance-seeking, people-pleasing, over-apologizing, emotional over-functioning. It's not about drama, it's about survival. Elana didn't want to be controlling. She didn't want to lose herself in others. She just didn't trust that she could be loved without proving she deserved it every day. That kind of insecurity doesn't fade easily, but it can be rewired. She started therapy a few months after the last breakup. At first, she didn't know how to explain it. She said things like, "I love too hard. I care too much. I'm just sensitive." But slowly, the sessions peeled those phrases back and revealed what lived beneath them. Fear. Not of being alone, but of not being worth staying for. Her therapist gave her exercises. She learned to sit with discomfort instead of trying to erase it. To pause before texting, "Are you mad at me?" To ask herself, "Do I need comfort? Or do I need control?" She practiced being present in silence in moments when the other person wasn't immediately available. And she began to notice the difference between love and anxiety. Love felt calm. Anxiety felt urgent. It didn't change overnight. There were still nights she stared at a read receipt for too long. Still days when the space between texts felt like rejection. But she caught herself sooner. She stopped performing, started expressing, started asking for what she needed without disguising it as caretaking. And one day, on a second date with someone new, she said something she'd never said before. "I'm still learning how to be close without losing myself, but I'm trying." He didn't run. And for the first time, she didn't panic. Elana still loves hard. That hasn't changed. But now she knows love isn't something you win with effort. It's something you build with trust. And trust doesn't mean they'll never leave. It means you'll still be whole if they do. Some insecurities cling to others. Others avoid them completely. They hide behind independence, behind logic, behind cold certainty. But at their core, they come from the same place. A fear that to be seen is to be judged, and to be judged is to be hurt. And so, some people never let anyone close. Not because they don't want love, but because they don't believe they can survive being truly known. Leo had an answer for everything. Not in a condescending way, he just always seemed to know things. He could deconstruct your favorite movie in one paragraph, quote Nietzsche and Reddit in the same breath, list 10 reasons why optimism was a form of denial, and do it while sounding like he was helping you, not mocking you. To most people online, Leo was sharp, entertaining, confident. In forums, on video calls, in DMs with acquaintances, he gave off the air of someone in control. Opinionated, well-read, unbothered. What no one noticed was that Leo hadn't left his apartment in 6 weeks. He told himself it was fine. He worked from home. He ordered groceries. He had everything he needed. He wasn't hiding. He was efficient. Besides, people were exhausting. You had to pretend to care about conversations that didn't matter. Smile at strangers. Laugh at jokes that missed. Inside his apartment, Leo didn't have to perform. Except he still did, just through screens. He curated his confidence like a profile bio. Funny, smart, casually aloof. Always in control of how he appeared. And if the conversation got too emotional, too vulnerable, too human, he ghosted. Politely. Said things like, "I've just got a lot going on," or "I don't really do heavy stuff," and no one questioned it, because Leo made boundaries sound noble. But beneath that curated self was something messier. It came out in moments he didn't talk about, like the day he turned down a date with someone he genuinely liked. They'd been talking online for a month. Good chemistry, smart, funny, his kind of dark humor. She asked to meet up. He agreed. Then, 2 days before the date, he remembered something. She'd seen him trip on the curb outside his building a week ago. She didn't say anything, maybe didn't even notice. But to Leo, that one stumble unraveled the version of himself he'd built, the unshakable, untouchable version. The one that didn't need anything, didn't falter. So he canceled, said he wasn't feeling well, then blocked her 2 days later when she followed up. He wasn't cruel, he was scared. But his fear never looked like fear. It looked like detachment. The first time Leo tried therapy, he made it 2 sessions. He spent most of the first explaining his worldview, how emotions were chemical noise, how people clung to childhood wounds like merit badges, how trauma had become a buzzword for people who couldn't take responsibility. The therapist listened, nodded, asked, "Who taught you that needing people was a weakness?" Leo laughed, said something sarcastic. Never booked a 3rd session. He liked being alone, genuinely. He could go days without speaking to anyone and feel fine. He preferred texts over calls, voice messages over video, and when someone told him they missed him, he didn't know how to respond. He didn't miss people. He missed versions of himself he got to be around them. But being around them meant risking the moment they'd see the other parts, the softer parts, the messier parts, the ones he didn't know how to defend. So he stayed distant, not out of malice, out of protection. Leo lived behind what psychologists call dismissive avoidant attachment, a relational pattern where independence becomes a defense against perceived vulnerability. Unlike anxious types, avoidants aren't afraid of being alone. They're afraid of being seen. They often grew up in environments where emotional needs were ignored, mocked, or met with discomfort, so they learned to self-soothe through withdrawal, logic, and independence. Their internal rule becomes, if I don't need anyone, I can't be hurt by anyone. And so they build fortresses of wit, of knowledge, of confidence. But inside, the same insecurity lives. What if I'm not enough when I'm not performing? Leo would never admit he was insecure, even to himself. He'd just say he didn't vibe with most people, that he was focused on his goals, that he didn't like drama. And it was true, partially. But the full truth was this: he wanted to be loved. He just didn't believe he could be, unless he stayed above the risk. One night, he was watching a documentary on mountaineering, something about high-altitude survival, oxygen deprivation, risk assessment. A climber said, "The higher you go, the lonelier it gets. But the fall's worse when you haven't told anyone you're climbing." Leo paused the video. Something in that sentence caught in his throat. He didn't cry. That wasn't his style. But for the first time in a long time, he imagined telling someone the truth, that he was tired of talking to people through filters, that he missed being known, even if it meant being seen with all the parts he didn't have witty comebacks for. It wasn't an epiphany. There was no dramatic moment of transformation, just a slow series of micro-decisions. He texted an old friend back when he'd ghosted months ago for being too emotionally demanding. He apologized. Honestly, they talked. It was awkward, but human. Then, later, he signed up for therapy again. A new one. Different approach. This time, when the therapist asked a hard question, he didn't deflect. He said quietly, "I'm not sure, but I think I want to figure it out." And that was the beginning. Leo still sounds confident, still posts clever things, still gives advice sometimes. But now, when someone asks how he's doing, he doesn't always say fine. Sometimes, he says weird, or tired, or kind of numb, and that's enough. Because he's finally learning that being understood starts with being seen, and being seen is only dangerous if you're pretending there's nothing to see. Some insecurities drive us to chase love. Others convince us to run from it. But there's another kind, quieter, more insidious. It's the insecurity of measurement, the kind that creeps in when we compare our lives, our talents, our worth, to the highlight reels of others. And the worst part? The more we measure, the more we disappear. Maya didn't mean to become someone else. It happened slowly, an algorithmic erosion of self. One story share, one filtered selfie, one string of hard-eyed reactions at a time. It started small. A post about burnout. It got traction. People said it was brave, raw, so real. So she posted more. Vulnerability that felt productive. Moments of her life curated into digestible captions. Polished honesty with just enough pain to be poetic. The likes rolled in. And with them, something warm. Something close to worth. She used to write in notebooks. Private thoughts. Spilled without punctuation. Now, she wrote to be seen. To be understood, or at least interpreted. Because in the quiet space after validation fades, something always asked, was that really me? Or just the version they liked the most? Maya didn't hate social media. She was good at it. Knew her angles. Knew what performed. She could predict which photos would spike and which captions would fall flat. But over time she started noticing something strange. When she looked at her own feed, she felt like a fan of someone else. The woman in the pictures was clever, soft-spoken, emotionally intelligent. Maya used to be that woman. Now, she just performed her. It seeped into everything. Before she posted, she'd ask herself, would this make someone jealous? Inspired? Protective? Not, is this true? Not, is this mine? She didn't know when she'd stopped asking those questions. All she knew was that when something didn't get engagement, she felt small, like she'd said the wrong thing in a language only she was still learning. Offline, the symptoms multiplied. She'd rehearse conversations before dinner parties, scan a room for the most respected person, and adjust her personality accordingly. She was magnetic, everyone said so. But deep down, Maya had no idea what people were actually drawn to. She suspected it wasn't her. Not really. Just the version that didn't need anything, didn't make mistakes. Didn't admit she was exhausted by the weight of constant impression. She wasn't trying to lie. She just didn't know how to exist unmirrored. It came to a head on her 30th birthday. She planned a low-key dinner. Friends, candles, photos she knew would turn out well. She posted a carousel that night, golden hour lighting, handwritten captions, toasts, and tilted glasses. It did well. Hundreds of comments. You're glowing. Iconic as always. Can I be you when I grow up? Maya smiled, typed thank you replies, then closed the app and sat on the edge of her bathtub for 40 minutes, staring at her reflection. She felt nothing. Not sad, not grateful, not old, just hollow. Because what no one saw, what the filters blurred and the captions disguised, was that Maya hadn't cried in a year. Not because she was healed, because she didn't know who to cry as. Maya was trapped in a common but invisible kind of insecurity, the kind built on external validation. Unlike surface-level attention-seeking, this kind of insecurity comes from deep-rooted uncertainty about self-worth. It's reinforced by social comparison, especially in digital spaces, where everyone else's life seems curated, clean, and more fulfilled. Psychologically, it triggers a feedback loop. You share something. You receive praise or attention. Your brain logs that behavior as rewarding. You do it again even if it no longer reflects who you are. Over time, your identity reshapes around what gets approval. The person you are becomes secondary to the person who performs well. And eventually, you forget which is which. Maya knew something had to change. Not immediately, not all at once. But the silence after that birthday post felt like a warning. So she started small. No camera at breakfast. No edits on journal entries. She texted a friend something unpolished. Not a packaged thought, just a feeling. I'm tired of being a brand. Her friend replied, then stopped selling. It wasn't rebellion. It was recovery. She took a break. Logged off for a month. The first week, she felt irrelevant. The second, she felt invisible. The third, she felt something like herself again. Not confident, not empowered, just real. Flawed. Whole. One morning, she looked at her reflection. No light tricks, no intention, and whispered, "You're still here." And for the first time in a long time, the mirror didn't feel like a stranger. Maya still posts sometimes, but now it's quieter, less sculpted, fewer filters, fewer captions written for applause. She doesn't care as much about likes, because she finally asked herself the right question. If no one was watching, would you still be you? And now she knows the answer. Some insecurities scream. Others whisper so quietly you confuse them with ambition, charm, or confidence. But at the core of every insecurity, beneath the perfection, the people-pleasing, the withdrawal, the performance, is a simple ache. To be worthy, without proving it. To be known, without shrinking. To be real, without being punished for it.